You are listening to the Merchant Meetings podcast. Join us as we share the insights, successes, and failures that we and others have experienced in the small business space. In today's podcast episode, we are bringing on Mark. And today we're going to go through Mark's story and his role in growing the Enhanced stores as well.
So Mark, you are my business partner in both Enhanced, Crown Barbershop, and our B2B brand that is in its early stages. And I think it could be a good story to share with how exactly you came into the fitness industry, because you definitely, I guess, weren't intending to have a career there, and then moving into, I guess, the role that you play now.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think starting from the very beginning, growing up, I was always very athletic, and I always played sports growing up, and I always had interest in health and fitness, but I didn't really know which direction I wanted to go in terms of career, and I always just followed my path, really, whatever I wanted to do, even if it was against what my parents wanted. Traditional Filipino family wanted me to go to uni and all of that stuff, and I just knew the classroom just wasn't for me. So when I finished year 12, which I did, I actually deferred uni. I was accepted into Charles Sturt. I wanted to become a police officer at one stage. I was very interested in even psychology, but I just knew the classroom environment wasn't my thing. At the time, I remember watching Fast and Furious, and I just fell in love with cars and all of that. And at the time, I was just starting to get my driving license, L's, P's, so I just developed an interest for it as well. And I was always like really good at hands-on stuff. So I would help my dad fix stuff, whether it's the lawnmower or whatever. And I just decided, you know what? I told my parents I'm not going to go to uni, which they were upset about. And I was like, I want to be a mechanic. They're like, what? Why would you do that kind of thing? Because all of my cousins and relatives all went to uni. I have like doctor cousins, mechanical engineers, like all of that blue, white collar professions, you know. So when I decided to go to become a mechanic, it was like a shock. And they're saying that, you know, we put you into private school and all these kind of things. Why would you just do that? But against their wants, I just followed what I wanted to do and got into mechanics. And I'd say fast forward like 1 to 2 years. During that time frame, a lot happened in my personal life, I think, which there were certain deaths and bad relationships, and fell into the wrong crowds and whatnot. And it led me down a very different path. And long story short, I found solace and like a safe haven when it came to training. I remember my first training session was with my brother. And just the feeling of the dopamine hit after you trained and letting out my anger and sadness and stuff in the gym was, I didn't feel like that anywhere else, you know. So midway through my apprenticeship, I was like, you know, I actually really love fitness. I think I found my calling. So midway through my apprenticeship, I studied Cert 3, 4 PT plus a diploma of business, and there was various like nutritional courses attached to that as well. And that basically started the journey really. And I remember I was having to fit full-time work in with my training, with my studies. So there were times where I had a ridiculous schedule because I was trying to fit everything in for like 3 to 4 months straight. I was waking up at 1, 2 a.m. because I wanted to go to the gym, train, do a couple hours of study, then go to work. Because I'll never forget, my brother would wake up and I was just my brother was going to bed and I was waking up, just starting my day, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I got to go to the gym. I got to come back home. I got to study because I want to finish this course. And I was just so driven. I really started to hone in on what direction I wanted to go in. And then fast forward 2 more years, when I finished my 4-year apprenticeship as a mechanic, I definitely fell out of love of the mechanic industry. But I always have, I think it was drilled into me by my parents, where if you start something, you finish it regardless. So for the workplace that I worked in was extremely toxic as well. And I think when we speak about this in later on, it taught me a lot about how to be a better employer, how to treat your team better, and how to just be a better leader overall. But yeah, for 2 years I sacrificed, I suffered, I was still studying, and as soon as I finished my apprenticeship, I quit. My boss at the time said, like, he offered me the world to stay, basically. And back then, it would have been like something around the 80, 90K salary. I was going to go transition into the office, not being on the tools anymore, potentially company car, fuel card, all these kind of things.
A lot of security being offered.
100%. And I think back then, I think it was just early 20s. When I presented that to my parents, they're like, oh my goodness, take it. You know what I mean? Like, all of a sudden, they're proud of me of pursuing mechanics. I was fixing their cars, and where they were like upset about it previously, they started seeing that I was good at it. And next minute, I'm actually fixing my cousin's cars, who, you know, are the professionals and whatever. And yeah, I was just always like I guess like black sheep in the family, the old professionals. I obviously have like tattoos, piercings, and all that, but I always just followed my path. But
and that was right before you chucked another spanner in the works. See what I did there?
yeah. So right before that, they didn't even know I was studying Cert 3 and 4 PT.
Oh, they didn't even know.
No, they didn't even know.
It was an official educational institution, so they could have been proud.
Yeah, 100%. But in their eyes, they're like, you just did this thing for 4 years. You get offered a promotion. You have more security and all these kinds of things. But it just wasn't, again, my passion. And over the 2 years when I started training, I developed such an immense passion, started meeting new people, and just falling in love with the fitness industry. So I didn't really have much of a plan. All I knew was I just need to get my foot in the industry. So that's when I decided to quit. And then the first thing I did was I went around every single gym in the area and just handed in my resume. Multiple gyms. I chased them back up again.
So you actually quit before you had found a new job. You were like, this is where I want to go. So what's the point? I guess waiting. I'm going to go and just out there. Wow.
Yeah, 100%. I thought about like staying in the job and then finding something different. But my mentality was, I know where I want to go. So I'm going to figure it out.
No plan B. Burn the boats.
No, definitely not. And I think back then I probably had, I think maybe close to like 10 grand saved up.
Yep.
I was still living at home anyway. So I was like, you know what, I live very frugally anyway. So I'm going to figure it out one way or another. And when I quit, I just hustled and put my resumes in. I went in and introduced myself to all these gym owners. And New Dimensions in Mount Druitt were the first gym to really give me an opportunity. And I never forget going to the, the interview. They do group interviews there. I remember rocking up. There were 6 people. All 5 of them were wearing like activewear and had industry experience and all these kind of things. I rocked up, presentable collared shirt, dress shoes and everything. And I was like, why are these guys just wearing activewear? And I was like, maybe it's because of the fitness industry or whatever. And it wasn't very like professional. They brought us into the group fitness room, and then you had meetings and interviews with 3 of the managers there. Right. Which to this day I still have a good relationship with, and just great people as well. But I'll never forget when I spoke to the main man there, the main manager. I told him straight up, like, I don't have any industry experience. I quit my job and applied for gym jobs because I know this is my path, this is my future, this is where I want to be. So if you give me a chance, I guarantee you'll be well worth your time. And I would like to imagine that even though I didn't have any experience, that resonated with him at the time. And then literally in a day or maybe a week later, I got a call and they do like a fitness testing. I did that, and then I ended up getting the job. Really, so
wow. And so just to give a little bit more context, coming from an immigrant household, because your parents both came over from the Philippines, you were born in Australia?
Yeah, I was born in Australia, yep.
And then I guess combined with that, you're able to come from a generation where potentially they may only have 1 or 2 careers throughout their lifetime, and that was considered normal.
Yep.
And so now you've gone to a private school, gone into uni and then jumped out of it, jumped into a mechanic apprenticeship, finished the apprenticeship, and then jumped out of it. So this is like not normal. Like inside your family specifically, this would not be considered normal. Like you're I guess, being involved with a high level of uncertainty.
Definitely. And I think it comes down to the fact too that majority of my family is in the Philippines. So it's very much a privilege to be in Australia. And my parents' mindset was like, we come here to provide you a better life, take advantage of the education and opportunities. And traditional household, like no one in my family are really entrepreneurs or business owners or whatever. They value the security and education more than anything else. So they just want to make sure that their sacrifice of coming here wasn't for nothing.
Yeah. So the responsibility that you hold is even greater than people that have just traditionally grown up in Australia, for a few generations, where our families almost give you the message, you need to be doing something that you enjoy, and that's the main focus. This is a completely different sort of context that you've grown up in.
Yep.
The responsibility is a lot higher, and therefore the uncertainty of jumping into different careers and then especially going into business would have been considered like not normal at all.
I think especially that a lot of my family that are here are like lawyers and psychologists and have all of these like high earning jobs. There's definitely a element in our culture of like comparison, and I think in many other cultures too, but particularly in the Filipino culture, whenever we have those family gatherings, how's your son? How's Mark? How's this? Oh, he's a mechanic. Oh, why is he doing that? My daughter, she's a lawyer now. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So that's I remember hearing that a lot as well too, but it never fazed me because I knew my path in the direction that I'm going. And it's funny now in hindsight, the difference that I'm starting to hear in the talk. I see my parents FaceTiming their brothers, my aunties and uncles, and the dialogue's so different now. It's like, what's Mark doing? Or there's another business here, there's another business there. He must be, making decent money now and all these kinds of things. And it's like, where was this before? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's
That's cool. And so then you received the job at ND?
Yep. I just really focused on doing the best I could there, like I did everywhere else. And I remember a lot of the staff, they hated the cold calling and whatnot, which is probably one of the most annoying things you can do. But I made it a thing that they would give me a list of names, numbers, emails even. And man, I would spend at least 1 to 3 hours a day calling. And if you've ever done that before, you hear the rejections, the piss off, like all these kinds of things. But I knew if I got just one person into the gym and I could show them around, I can close them. And there were times where a staff member would be sick or whatever, and manager called me, Mark, X and such called in sick. Would you be able to work 12 hours? No problem. I never had an issue with working because any opportunity that was presented to me, I always just took advantage of it. And I think that was instilled in me from like a young age from my parents. Like my parents work 7 days a week. I very rarely saw them. So like the work ethic and the discipline was just instilled in me. And just hustled. And then I think I started getting more into supplementation as well. And I went to multiple supplement stores. I remember the first supplement store I ever went to, I went in, I was having a look around. I go to the guy. I'm looking at putting on some more muscle, the usual when you're young, getting into the gym. Didn't even ask me any questions. He referred me straight to this mass gainer. Didn't ask me if I was lactose intolerant or anything like that. And then when I went home, I was so excited. Mind you, I spent like $170 or something like that. I went home, I took it. It was so thick, it destroyed my guts, and it was just horrendous for me. So I went back and I was like, bro, is this normal? Like, is it supposed to be this thick and upset my stomach? And he offered no help or nothing at all. I went to other supplement stores and whatnot, and I didn't really get much help or guidance. And then I stepped into your store at the time. So, and I'll never forget the first interaction. I had like free samples. I had a free shaker. He gave me a free shirt, and I think I just bought like a pre-workout or something. I'm like, what the heck? What?
This guy's losing money.
Yeah, I was like, I never experienced that anywhere else. So I was like, man, I'm definitely coming back here. And then I'd say every single time I came back was end up being like monthly, I'd say. I would get something else. You would educate me on something else. And then the conversation started to steer towards like other things like life, like business eventually. I remember when I brought out a whole bunch of hoodies one time, you were one of the first to jump on board with that and support as well. And then I found out that you and T I met at the time as well were very devout Christians, which to me is a very big thing because it speaks to that you both would have like very, very strong character, good values, which I wanted to surround myself with. And fast forward, I think you offered me a job to work on Saturdays. You were looking for someone for Saturdays. I was like, yeah, why not? I'll do it. I started really getting into supplements and how it can benefit your training, your sleep, your recovery, etc. And yeah, just was very interested in learning. So I would work there every Saturday. I would have all the tabs up on my laptop, studying ingredients and all that kind of stuff. And I think, long story short, again, there was an opportunity to go full time with you, and I just thought in my head it was a pay cut coming from where I already was, but I saw the vision. You know what I mean? I think when I got to know you and T even better, it was more so the fact that I could tell that you and T had unimpeachable character, that I knew there was opportunity for growth here, and I knew the team that we were developing could do anything.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I'm going to take this risk again and go into the supplement industry with you. And then I remember our first conversations about going full time. I made it very clear that, I have much more ambition than just to be a store manager. I think at the time I said that I want to have 6 figures in my bank account. I want to make $100,000 because I knew if I learned the skill sets, had the belief systems, character traits, and surrounded myself with the right people to make $100,000, 1 million would be easy. You know what I mean?
Do you remember my response to that? Because thinking back now, I can't remember what I said, but it wouldn't have been no.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I would have said to that.
It was more so along the lines of, you're always so chill about it. You're just like, yeah, cool, we can definitely work something out. It was like that, you know what I mean? So it was like, it was more so, you're always very chill about those kinds of situations. But I think we were always obviously following each other on Instagram and stuff. And I think you saw the work ethic that I had as well. And I think that's why you felt confident in making me full time. And I remember you were supposed to stay with me for a week to learn the store, right?
This is so typical of me.
And then after one day, you're like, oh, you're all right. You can do it on your own. I was like, are you sure? I barely knew all the products. Every single customer would come in and be like, where's Steve? I had so much. I couldn't fill your shoes because especially back then, everyone knew you as that big white dude, and your knowledge on supplements and nutrition were miles ahead of me. But with, like I said, everything I do, I always just take the opportunity. And man, every single time there was no customers in store, I'm studying. I had all supplements on the bench, and I would be reading ingredient panels. I would be listening to podcasts, YouTube videos, because I was just so interested. And then eventually, it went from customers asking where Steve is to
I'd work a casual shift, and then someone would walk in. They'd be like, "Oh, Mark's not here." Like, "Nah, bro, I can probably help you out though." "Nah, we'll come back with Mark's."
Yeah.
Oh wow, that hurts.
Yeah. And then those early days, looking back now, it's so humbling because all the work that we had to do to when you rebranded to Zion Nutrition. I was doing taste testings after close. I was filming content before opening. Back then, Reels wasn't a thing. So, and we didn't really have T to do the marketing for us. So I was learning how to use Canva, putting together content, trying to network with other people. And I remember you started to give me the reins of doing the ordering and whatnot, which I didn't take for granted because
spending someone else's money.
Exactly. I was like, man, I need to really understand finances, projections, negotiations, understanding margins, and making sure that I'm not screwing this up. And then eventually it got to the point where I was working full time. You came to the store once, and then I was like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" It's like, "Bro, I'm bored." You know what I mean? I was like, and in my mindset, I was like, you know what? Let me do everything. Let me learn everything. And if I have an idea or something, I want to present it to you. Let me know what you think.
Yep.
And from the beginning, what I've always appreciated is you've never treated me like I was like lesser than you. We'd always come up with ideas together and figure out the best move forward. And that's why I think we are where we are now, because one, our values and belief systems, I think, are very much in alignment, and we just have that trust for each other, which I think is a very rare thing as well too. So yeah, and then less than a year of working for you.
It must have been like 10 or 11 months.
Yeah, because I remember I wasn't at ND for less than a year before I started working with you. And then the same thing happened with us. You found that opportunity in Penrith. And I remember the conversation. You're like, I found this store in Penrith. I think it's a great opportunity. It was such a saturated area. There's so many gyms there as well. There was a lot of supplement store. One of the biggest supplement store was literally right across the road from us at the time as well too. And again, in my head, I just had so immense belief in me, you, T, Pedge, the small team that we had. I said, stuff it. You only live once.
100%.
And yeah, that was ultimately the beginning of Enhanced Supplements Penrith.
Exactly, yeah. So I think one of the things that I most look for in people as well, which is why I think I probably spend a day or two with you before being like, nah, you're sweet, is when people have the ability to teach themselves things. And so, like, I wasn't great at school either. I think I ended up dropping out in year 10 and then coming back because I was too young to have a car license, and that's what they wanted for me to have an apprenticeship at that time out of all the places that I called. And going back to school, I think one of the only things that I really appreciate is spending enough time to teach myself concepts that I wasn't learning in class because it wasn't the right environment for me. But as soon as I knew that I could teach myself something, I knew that, well, as soon as I've got a vision for what I want to achieve, all I need to do is replicate that ability to teach myself things. And I think I saw that same thing in you. It's like when I came into the store, you had 10 tabs open trying to learn about ingredients and trying to learn how they work in the body. And it's like, if he's got the ability to teach himself and he's going to keep doing that, then I don't need to be there every step of the way. I don't want to micromanage. I actually want to let someone that has the ability like move into that position. Now, probably in hindsight, like one day was too short, but at the same time, I don't think you're a normal employee. I think you always had the potential to own your own businesses and be a business partner. And so I think I saw that. And I think around the same time, I was kind of learning more about my own personality as well, because I think like I've got like entrepreneurial DNA. Like it's not so much just like a set business owner that wants to work for themselves. That's not really the driving factor. It's more so I like creating structures. I like working with people. I like executing on ideas, and I need to do that. And so I thought, well, if we can create a team of killers, like of people that actually have abilities to do things, this is absolutely going to be better for both, like, I guess, something that facilitates my own personality, but for the financial goals and the other achievements that we want to hit as well.
That's where I think our relationship is so unique, because I'd say you were definitely like a natural born entrepreneur. You just understood like the numbers. You have a genuine love for like business and stuff. Where for me it was like definitely like quite opposite. I had no one in my family that was like entrepreneurial. I wouldn't say I had natural entrepreneurial tendencies, but what I know I have always had was like the work ethic. I always like had the discipline and work ethic, and over the years I started growing into the entrepreneur. And I always knew that I wanted to like have my own businesses and live my life on my terms. And exactly what you described, build a team of killers and provide opportunity for people, which I think now I'm like definitely more proud of than anything else. Being able to provide opportunities for other people is pretty cool.
And so when we opened the Penrith store, you were currently working as a full-timer on a salary. And then I proposed something that was, I guess, a little bit more interesting. Like it would have, again, carried some uncertainty and risk with it. Did you want to talk about what I proposed in order for us to become business partners at Penrith?
Yeah, so this one's a very interesting one that I don't think I've really spoken about to anyone. So it'll be pretty cool to describe because I think when it comes to business, people always make excuses like I don't have the money, I don't have the skill sets or anything like that. And our partnership was very unique where I think you saw the value in me, I saw the value in you. So the arrangement when we were opening up the Penrith store and we decided, yep, we're going to pull the trigger was obviously at the time I didn't have the capital to put money into the business, but you did. And we would have been stretched for resources. So you would have had to go to Blacktown, I would have had to go to Penrith full time. So the offer was for me to work for 6 months without pay. And then by the end of the 6 months, obviously, depending on how the business went, I would receive 50% of the ownership of the business. And yeah, I think that's a very unique proposition because you have all the risk putting up the capital. Because for me, I could have just been like, oh, this is too hard, I'm leaving, and that's it. You know what I mean? But um, when you offered me that, I thought about it. I'm like, I thought about you and T first and foremost. Like this guy's putting up X amount to open up this store and whatnot and he's trusting in me to run it and make it profitable. Like I thought that was such craziness, you know. And when I was explaining that to my parents, they couldn't understand it.
Why I would do it, yeah.
Yeah, it was more so like why I would do it. Like you're taking a risk, how you gonna make money and like all these kinds of things. And I just knew again, I always refer back to it. I just had immense belief in myself and the team that we have that I didn't have one like little pinch of doubt at all. So and then I just knew what we had to do. We put together a plan. I just need to work that a little bit harder, do that a little bit more. We opened up earlier, we closed later. I remember opening up, there was such a headache as well too with working with all the distributors and whatnot as well. But yeah, that was the initial arrangement. And yeah,
Essentially, some suppliers didn't want to supply us because of the relationships they had already established with other stores in the area. They some of them essentially said, "We're not stocking you," which is a pretty big like kick in the nuts. Like,
yeah, there were some big brands that at the time I think brand was definitely more powerful. So we couldn't stock certain brands because of relationships.
Yeah.
So we had to pivot and adjust. And there were so many times where these distributors would come into the store to say hi and talk to me, and they're like, why would you open up here?
this is crazy.
You guys are crazy. I remember hearing you will fail. You know, you're not gonna last that long. Have you thought about this and all these kinds of things? And what's funny is, fast forward, I'd say 8 weeks from opening, we broke even basically, and we're profitable inside 8 weeks. Which I think if you run a business and understand business, that's actually very rare.
Yeah, it's insane. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen. And I mean, as it currently stands, which has just been a recent development, the main competitor that we were, I guess, competing with, which we were definitely the underdogs in this situation, has now actually moved or changed their business model. And so the way that I view it is that they may have a section of their business that's still operating, but it's in a different capacity right now. I don't think it's their main focus, or it certainly doesn't seem that way, which is pretty crazy to be the underdog. And I actually think we would be the main supplement store on the street right now, only because it's clearly not their main focus. And so if they've changed focus, they've changed it for a reason, which is a pretty amazing thing to see sort of in a 5-year time frame. And as much as 5 years might seem long to some people, like it goes quick.
Yeah, and especially because we are such a smaller store. That's where I think when it comes to business, it's not just about the products we sell. You know what I mean? It's our branding, it's our marketing, it's our genuine passion for the industry that we're in that definitely differentiates us from like anyone else, really. So. Yeah.
And so obviously you ended up inheriting the equity off the back of the proposal. What would you have said that was your hardest day in business? It can either be during that period or just overall. What's the day that you had the biggest challenge?
Yeah, when I think about this, I remember quite vividly the time frame of it, because obviously going into that and being so fresh and not understanding taxes and everything else associated with business, accounting and everything else, I was starting my days generally from like 6 a.m. because to make some extra side cash on the side, I would train people or do some coaching or whatever. And I was doing the same thing after close. So I decided to open 9 a.m. and close 7 p.m. every day just to test the market because our competitors were open from 10 to 6 generally, I think.
Yep.
And so those were long ass days. And obviously, starting the business, there were times where maybe one person walks in. I remember I would get excited where someone walks in and all they got was like a protein bar or something. I'm like, oh. But during that time frame, I was making videos, I was doing the marketing, I was making Canva posts and all that kind of stuff as well. But because of my long days, my diet and my training definitely suffered. And I know when I don't get those things in, which I like to call now, which are my non-negotiables, it really affects my mental health and obviously will affect my physical health as well too. But I knew my primary focus had to be the business above all else. So even above me, above family, above time with friends, whatever, all I did for those first, I'd say, easily 3 to 6 months was just focus on growing Penrith. That's it. So I'd say inside 3 months, obviously I wasn't making any like real money then either. I was just digging into the small savings that I had and living very frugally. My money started to diminish. I wasn't obviously training or eating, so I fell into a very bad mental state. But I don't think I ever really spoke to you or T or anyone about it because for me, I needed to find the strength to persevere. And I knew if this was the route I was going to go down, this is the most important test that I'm ever going to go through in my life. So I went through it like on my own, and I'm very glad because it taught me so much about myself and life at the time. And yeah, slowly but surely I dug my way out. But because I wasn't training, I wasn't dieting, I wasn't happy with my physique, and I took a photo that I always refer back to. I'll never forget how I was feeling. You could tell I didn't look myself, I didn't feel myself, and I would never be like depressed, but there were times where like I'd come home after a long day, and then I'm just laying on the couch exhausted. I wouldn't even have a shower. I'd just sleep in my uniform. Sometimes there were times where I sleep in my uniform, get up, go train a client, and go straight to work. No shower, no food, nothing. It was like struggle
Rough.
times like that. Yeah, but on the other side, the business was thriving. It was like doing so well, and I would never allow people to see that. Like every single customer that came in, hey guys, how you going? You know, always chirpy. I would never serve someone and be, even if I'm feeling crap inside, I'm gonna be like, hey, what do you want? You know what I mean? So
I do think that's an important lesson for people as well, because I don't really want to talk on like I guess mental health as such, at least in this sort of personal podcast. But I do think that there is sort of a messaging out there now where when things get tough, the first thing that you need to focus on is self-care and making sure that you're okay and limiting the exposure to stress and all that sort of stuff. And I actually think the ability to overcome challenges, to push through it, so it's tough and you just move through it. And I think that particular skill, I think, actually serves people to a much greater degree, and it's something that you can then hold on to. You've now got a track record of overcoming challenges, and you know that inside you can refer back to that, and that's a strength that you can hold on to. Whereas I think if you pull back and you go, oh, hold on, I'm just going to pause for 5 minutes, I actually don't think you get the same thing. And so, yeah, that's a very interesting sort of, I guess, reflection.
yeah, I think one of my favorite sayings is there's no such things as bad days, only character building days. And I think it's more so because I was doing it for more than just myself. Like I said, I was valuing the trust and risk that you put in me to run the store. I knew that what I was doing was for people other than myself. So I think that was a big driving factor for me when like I'd wake up, it's 4 a.m. and I didn't want to get up. I'm like, I have to get up. There was no compromise. Like I have to do what I have to do because it's not just my life at stake. It's yours, it's T's, it's my family's. That's how I envisioned it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
And so that I guess that's a picture of how hard it got in the early stages. Once you, I guess, had developed as a business owner and you're operating sort of to a greater degree, we've had a few challenges along the way. Obviously, the COVID lockdowns, the flooding of the store. What would you have said was a day that you were just like, man, this is a challenge?
That's the biggest thing with us. Like I'd love to say like nothing's really been like challenging, but if I reference like COVID, for example, the way our minds think, it's like when COVID happened, lockdown happened, I guarantee you there would be so many people like, oh man, what are we gonna do? I'm gonna lose my job. How am I gonna make money? Whatever. I'll never forget when COVID got announced and lockdown got announced. I called you straight away, and the first thing we said was, all right, what are we gonna do? And then straight away we're strategizing. Let's open up the online store. We're gonna offer same day home deliveries, social distancing, so we can just leave it at your front door. You can call us anytime, DM us, whatever you like. And then we were like, what else can we do? Let's give away free greens to the frontline workers that are gonna need it the most. And I think some people might think that's like a really good marketing thing, but for us, it was actually the genuine need and want to help. So in times of like crisis, we're still thinking very proactively about it. So like as much as it was probably a tough time, like financially, and making sure that we could pay rent and pay our wages and stuff like that, for me, it was never really like a struggle, I'd say, because of the team that we have, how we think, and how we operate under pressure. I think.
And I think ultimately that comes down to the business model we've also created that allows us to move from a position of strength. Like I think we would have had enough funds to cover the rent for the commercial properties for 2 years in advance, even if we made no sales. And so obviously the stress that we sort of incurred from the situation may not have been as large as it was for other people, but that's ultimately down to the business model that we've created. But you're absolutely right. We always take a solution-based focus. Like when something bad happens, there's usually an opportunity if you can change, I guess, your focus from just looking at what's wrong as to, well, if this is wrong, what other like spaces have now opened up for opportunity? And I think that's how we've really looked at things quite like broadly across all of our businesses.
Yeah, like I think the next catastrophic thing that happened was there was massive storms in Penrith, and the roof in our store collapsed. There was water everywhere. Like the store got destroyed, and I think again most people would just be like, "Oh my goodness, what I'm gonna do? What can I do? Whatever." And then same thing, we put our thinking caps on. Straight away, we already had like business insurance. Yep. So ultimately, even if we didn't have to trade, we'd actually be sweet financially.
Yep.
You know,
business interruption insurance, guys. Make sure you've got that.
Very important. Important.
That will essentially, depending on how like what you insure your business interruptions for, it will cover the profit that you should have been making during that period. So if you experience a downturn, often they'll give you 80%, maybe 100% of what you've lost as a result of that event. So BI, make sure it's in your policies.
And that's like what I love about business. Like it forces you to learn about these things and pivot and move. And we were very lucky at the time that 2 doors next to us, which is the same landlord, was vacant. And our landlord, we're very blessed to be very good to us all the time. She offered us to rent that area
for the same rent.
Temporarily, and while we fix the other area. So we literally just moved 2 doors down. That was an effort and a half in itself, cleaning up the store and shifting everything over. And that store had its own issues. It was also leaking as well. But we made it work. And not one time, I remember we were cleaning the floor, me, you, and Dre, and we were just like, man, don't you love business? we got through COVID, and then this happened at the worst time ever as well too. And it's just like, but we never were like down in the dumps about it. We're just
I don't think we allow negative talk to happen because it doesn't serve you in any way. And as soon as that it catches like a disease, people just like get in a negative mindset. You allow one negative comment, someone else backs it up with another one, and like that frustrates me. It's just like, you've been given this position, like, yeah, deal with it.
Yeah, I don't like energies, mentalities that don't serve me. No. And I think especially again in the position that we're in, we're responsible for other people's livelihoods. So if we're thinking in like a scarcity mindset and a problem mindset, not focusing on solutions, it's going to affect other people around us as well
Yeah.
too. So we can't afford to think like that.
T, would you like to throw in a few questions?
What area in business do you think you need to improve on now to grow your businesses that you currently have,
To,
or grow in business?
in order to get to the next level? So something beyond where we're at.
Yeah, I think about this all the time because I'd like to think like we're in such still babies in business, you know, like the Penrith store is officially like 4 years old now. It was such in its infancy, you know what I mean? So I always think what's the next level for growth for myself and everyone around me. But I think for me, it's definitely improving on my leadership skills in particular, you know, training the right people to be in the right areas of the business that's going to help the business scale, so that way I can focus on other areas of the business that is more important for us to scale and grow, because I know we already have some goals in mind that we know are going to scale the business as well. And I think in order to do that, you need the right people in place. And I think that is where my skill sets lie, in finding good talent, nurturing good talent, and providing opportunity for the right people as well. But I also think I also need to continue to improve my business acumen, understanding brand a little bit more, marketing a little bit more, and especially with this whole like AI and stuff now as well.
Yeah,
It's
that's true.
a very interesting time frame as well. So yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, you can never think that you know everything, and it's just like life in general. It's just a constant flow state of getting better and improving and learning, and yeah, always seeking to be better, really. So
No,
to add to that, the way it actually happened was, I think a year into Penrith, I was actually supposed to buy Penrith 100% from you. And then, because I was doing full time at Penrith, so you said to me, I'll never forget this, you were like, there eventually get to the time where, because you're doing all of the work, you might I might grow resentment towards you.
I do remember this conversation.
And I was like, you absolutely crazy. You know what I mean? Like for me, I was very comfortable with the situation because I wouldn't be in this opportunity if you didn't take that risk on me. Like I understand, like I did the work and returned you back your capital investment, all that kind of stuff. But I always knew that we would be better and stronger together.
Yeah.
And then that's when we were brainstorming. We were at the Blacktown store, and then a light bulb moment clicked. And like, why don't you buy into Blacktown, and we merge the stores together and rebrand Zion to Enhance. And I think that was probably the best decision that we made, because yeah, we probably would have made like good money running our own stores, whatever. But what we can create together is so much, and so much more than just money as well too. So
Yeah, that could have been a bad like business decision on my half.
yeah,
And I think ultimately it came from not wanting someone to resent me because I was just simply taking profits. And so I think we've tried to, I guess, input systems into all of the businesses where the person that's doing a lot of the work, we do reward them in as many ways as we can. We often try and lift the cap of what they can earn, and we're definitely not like stingy in any sort of way, because I just think the more that you look after people, the more they want to do more business with you, and we want to do more business.
and I think you want the people around you to also grow, because if we're growing and we're not going to be able to build the visions that we want. We want people to grow like with us as well. And I think if we only cared for us, the decisions we've already made wouldn't be the same. You know what I mean? We could have probably made a lot more smarter business decisions to make us more money. But I think everything that we've done is for the larger vision, even if that means less money for us, which obviously now is like bearing fruits. So
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing as a business owner. Like, if you do want to have some sort of scale to your business, then you need to increase the ability, skill sets, knowledge of the employees. And you can't be afraid that they're going to upskill themselves and then no longer need you. That's just, part of the parcel. That could always potentially happen. But you need to offer something that's so valuable that the chance of that happening is minimal. But like just keeping your employees down so that they keep doing what you want them to do in order that you can keep making the same profits that you're currently making, I just think that's a recipe for losing. But yeah, we certainly haven't carried that particular philosophy in business. It's always been people over profit.
Yeah, I mean that's why I think we attract like the right people like to us as well too.
Yeah.
Which is I think it's the big thing. You attract the energy that you give out massively. And we've been so blessed with the guys we have around us. So yeah.
100%. Did you have any other follow-up questions?
Yes, you've spoken a lot about your parents, especially at the beginning of your journey. At what point did your parents realize, wow, all the decisions Mark has made has turned out really well for him? Because I know that they were a bit, would say, confused as to why you're choosing to work in a retail store and then go into partnership with this guy. At what point did they have that switch and say, oh, wow, Mark is successful in his field of work?
Yeah, I love this question because my parents, I'm very blessed. I have very loving parents that have always looked after me, and I know that have always just wanted what's best for me. And the thing about especially my mom is she doesn't care how much I earn or what I do, just as long as I'm happy. And I know she sees, because fellow moms, they love being on Facebook and they see the stories that I put up and whatnot, and she knows that, you know, I'm in a much better financial state now and are doing good things and whatnot. But she doesn't care how much money I earn or anything like that. All she cares about is that I'm happy. And when she says that she's proud of me, it's not like she's proud of the successes. She's proud that I've got good direction now. Because growing up, I could have went down a completely different path. It wasn't too long ago where I was involved in the wrong things. So I think she takes more joy now of me being on a better path, providing value, seeing the impact I'm having on like my brother and people around me as well too, is what she's most proud of. And I think even when I started mechanics, she was so distraught about going into the industry. But when she started seeing how good I was at it and my skills at it, fixing her car, she was proud. So I think it's more so she just doesn't want me to make the wrong decisions, and she ultimately just wants me to be happy. And my dad, on the other hand, I think is more, he takes a lot of pride in the man that I've become, I think, because when I was going down the other route, I knew that I disappointed him massively. So yeah, I think he's more proud than anything. And I think it just comes down to following my passions and what I wanted to do in life, which is what made them come around and now to be proud of me, I'd like to think. So yeah.
That's good. Is there any others?
Those are all my questions.
Maybe we'll just introduce Andre into the situation, because he's become a very key part of Enhanced, and I think he's mostly grown under your leadership, although I guess we're business owners all together now, and so the conversation is a little bit different. But did you want to maybe give an insight, I guess, into having your first employee under your wing?
Yeah, Andre, man. The thing about Andre is we were mates first. We became good mates. And similarly to you, I saw a lot of the same things in him in terms of character traits, values that were very much in alignment. And yeah, I just always saw potential in him. You know, and I think I have a knack for that when the person is willing to put in the work and get better themselves as well. I think I have a way of bringing it out of them, because he was working at a nursing home of all places, which he absolutely hated, and he would always be shopping with us. So there was a point in time where we started to need someone for the store.
And he probably needed to be shopping with us, because he did not look the part on paper. He was a skinny little guy that had glasses. Like, he looked very nerdy in his younger stages. And when I don't know if it was you proposed it, or I think you proposed to me that we would take him on.
Yeah.
I kind of looked at him and I'm like we're only just transitioning out of the normal stereotype for supplement stores being like a big muscular guy standing behind the desk. I'm like, is this the guy that we're like moving into here? Like,
Yeah, because obviously when it comes to supplement stores, especially I'd say 5 years ago, you only saw big jack dudes behind the counter, and that was like the image of supplement stores. So from a business perspective, I understood the hesitation. You have to think about these things. Is this guy the right fit?
I knew he was a
And
nice guy because I think he was coming to the gym that I was originally working at before I started the store, and I knew his dad. I'm like, he's a nice guy, but I'm like, maybe too nice. Like,
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like when I was looking for people, it was so hard to find the right fit. I had so many people ask me for jobs, PTs and stuff like that, that I just didn't see the long-term vision with them. And the more I spoke to Andre, the more he picked up supplements, the more I was just picking his brain. He had all of the soft skills. I knew he was a hard worker. I knew he was trustworthy, and all of those areas which are more important to me than the hard skills. I knew I could build the knowledge up and train him and whatever. And when I told him, if you're interested, I may be looking at getting a casual here. Is that something of interest to you? He said he was interested. So that's when I offered him to come in to train with me for free whenever he had free time. So when he had free time that he wasn't working, he would come in for days and just shadow me and see how I sell. I would educate him and whatever. And then it got to the point where I was like, all right, now you're going to be behind the counter. I'm just going to observe. And man, I'll never forget the first day that happened. I called you afterwards, and I was like, "Bro, I think you're right. This guy isn't the right one," because he was mumbling, stumbling, couldn't sell anything, and yeah, it was just bad. But I was like, you know what? Let me speak to him, and let's continue to train him.
yeah.
And then
I think that's important for young people to realize as well. I think so often the mindset of a young guy wanting to move into an industry that they're passionate about is, oh, well, like what wage do I start on? Like what salary is going to be offered to me here? And it's just like, no, like you don't offer any value to us right now, especially if our business is set with a structure that's got enough staff and we're profitable. Like you're not offering us anything. If you want to go and work inside a business that you're passionate about and you see a team that you want to join in, go offer to work for free because they're training you. They're giving you way more than what you're giving them. And I think so it's such like a wrong mindset to come in. Like if you're truly, you've got the ambition and I think even the audacity to say you want to work in an industry that you're passionate about, which is not something that everyone gets to do, go offer your time for free. That's completely acceptable. And I understand, like, fair trading will say that, a certain amount of like free work now needs to be considered in, this way and not that way. But seriously, like if you can trust the people that you're potentially going to be employing in that sort of capacity and they really truly want the opportunity, young guys, like you're receiving something, you're not doing something for us. And we want those young people to come through, but I think people massively overvalue their time and what they're bringing to like an already established structure.
Yeah, and that's a very good point that he was coming in his own time to train with me for free, and sometimes even skipping work to come in to work for free because he wanted to learn. And I don't think many people are willing to do that. I don't think many people would be willing to work for free for 6 months either. You know what I mean? So it's a mentality thing. And then fast forward now, like he's a better salesman than me now.
I know.
So,
It's such a funny thing because this is before he became an owner as well. I think the mentality that we have when we're serving customers is like we just certainly don't want to push them in any sort of way to be buying any more than what they need. And often that can mean that we actually underserve them. And this is an important thing in sales. Like if you're actually helping someone by the product that you're giving them, that's the way that you need to view it. And so underserving them by not like giving them the upsell can actually be not the right thing for the customer. And I don't think he had that same hesitation. He was like, I know the benefits of this. You need it. Like, it was just such like an A plus B, like equals, and 1 + 1 = 2. Is like it's a equation for him. And I think that's a really important thing in sales. Like so often the hesitation of not upselling someone is because we think we're upselling them for no additional benefit. And he certainly didn't see it that way. And like that was a real strength that he had.
Yeah, and I think I definitely have to say this, like especially the early days, and even now to an extent, I'm always extremely hard on Andre. Like I think I'm harder on Andre than anyone else is, and it's mainly because I see his potential and his continued potential as well. Like there were times where I would tell him I needed to come in an hour early because we're going to film. I needed to deliver this to this customer. We need to stay back and clean up the store. I want you to mop the store. Where's all the stories today? Like I'm very like nitpicky on things, and at times I think I can definitely be micromanaging like too much, but it's because I see the potential and growth in him. And I think in many ways he appreciates that as well, because I don't think he'd be the way he is now if I wasn't there to really drive him and push him. But more so, I think through all that, I've allowed him to see in himself that, yeah, you know what, I can do these things, and I can become an entrepreneur and be a business owner, which now look at him, he is. So,
and off the back of that dedication, he had opportunities come from it. And I've seen like this rhetoric sort of coming through where it's like, if you're working for someone else, you get in at 9 and you leave at 5 and you just do what you're paid to do. Don't do anything additional for the business owner because, you know, that's not profiting you. And it's just like, no one in our network has that mentality, and the people in our network have so many opportunities come to them off the back of dedication and working when they're not going to necessarily receive a direct financial benefit right now. And I think that's a massive lesson that people need to learn. Like, the opportunities that you're going to get from the people that you want them from will come off the back of giving something, not just getting something.
yeah, I think that's what we're really big on, and we're very observant as well. And we often talk about this. Like, we already have ideas and strategies and places that we see a lot of the guys in that team where they can elevate to, and already provide them with more stuff as well. We're very observant with that, and I think we value loyalty more than anything, and obviously work ethic. Like, we actually have to see that you're not just doing the bare minimum and whatnot, because it's what we had to do. Ultimately, like we had to do more than what was required, and yeah, if we see the same thing, we're always going to want to make sure that you're well rewarded for the things that you do and provide you.
And as we said, we want to be working with a bunch of killers. We don't want like some soft boys as a part of the team. All right, final question. What is a piece of advice that you believe to be untrue or misleading that you've received in the past?
That's a great question. Piece of advice that I believe to be untrue or misleading.
So it might have sounded true when you hear it, and then you go, that doesn't quite sound right, now that I've had X amount of experiences.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, especially if you're looking at getting into business and being an entrepreneur, there's this thing about like, work 24/7, don't sleep, wake up at 3 a.m., you know, work, where, as you guys would have heard, when I had that mentality and I did that, it like destroyed me internally. And I think the most important thing is rest, sleep, and having a proper structure is actually super important. But what allows you to perform even further is doing things and having a vision that's bigger than just yourself. I think that's what's going to allow you to grow, to find people that are going to help you grow, and ultimately become better every single day. But don't listen to the whole work 24/7 BS. You know, I mean, that's horrible advice for you. You want to work smart, get around good people, have clear vision, have good work ethic, and believe in yourself ultimately. So rest, recover, learn from my mistakes, and be efficient.
Yeah. So hard work is a prerequisite to be successful,
Yeah.
but simply just relying on hard work and only moving that lever, essentially, it doesn't mean that you're putting out optimized work. And when you come against a competitor that's actually implementing optimized hard work, you'll ultimately lose if all you have to work on is hard work.
Yeah, because you can be busy, but it doesn't mean you're productive. There's a big difference with that, for sure. So
The grind thing isn't necessarily true. It's a prerequisite, but optimized work is always going to win out.
yeah, 100%.
Awesome, TT. Thank you for hosting this interview with
Hosting.
Mark Magallanes. I think we'll probably bring some of the other boys on, and I'm sure we'll have some other chats in the future, because we're always tackling new ventures, and we can give some insights to people around that. I think that's valuable.
Yeah, that was like such like the bare minimum of everything. So
Yeah,
a
just-
good introduction, I think.
Yeah, a very skeleton approach to this one, but
Yeah,
that's
so
cool.
if you're listening to the podcast and you found Mark's story really resonated with you, or you want to follow more of his journey, we'll put all of his socials down below so you can follow along with him. But we can't wait to jump into some more stories and bring Mark back on for some more podcast episodes. Cut.